Thanks very much, Catherine. So good morning, everybody. My name is Robert Iles, and I'm a researcher at the Building Research Establishment. So as Catherine said, today's theme is sustainable finance, but I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball and talk about it from the perspective of value and what we actually value and how that might be relevant to the built environment. So I'm just loading up some slides there, so to give me a minute while that happens. It's taking a little bit of time. There we go. So let's imagine we get a bunch of random people in the room and we ask them the question, what do they value? So just for the sake of argument, I've got some well-known faces and maybe some less well-known faces here. We've got Jacob Rees-Mogg, we've got His Holiness the Dalai Lama, we've got Caroline Lucas, who used to lead the UK's Green Party, we've got Aisha Farouk, who's Pakistan's first ever female fighter pilot. We've got in black and white some hairy youngster who plays the guitar, and we've got some familiar faces as well. So imagine we ask them the question, what do they value? I've done this exercise a few times now with students in various settings, and it's very interesting to listen to what they actually answer to that question. Peace, a healthy planet, money and more money, freedom, social justice, gold jewellery. And it's interesting, in retrospect, I should have probably put a couple of construction workers on this. Listening to Tony was really interesting because good construction workers might say health and safety to make sure, I know they would value a site that's safe, that everyone's got the correct PPE, everyone knows what they need to do, and they've got the right skills to do the job and to thrive. So the message that I'm getting to is, in asking that question, what do you value? The message is there's going to be a lot of different things people are going to say. It's going to vary considerably between pounds, people, environment, safety, and many other things. Let's imagine we ask the same question to a population. What on earth are they going to say? And extending that even further, if we ask the same question to the planet, you know, what does the planet value? And I think here we start to get into a few problems, because we're going to get the situation where people are going to have many conflicting values. Some people are going to value money, some people are going to value the environment. And also this whole business of what is value. I think there is a problem that we've kind of grossly abstracted it into sort of pounds and pence, and you know, we're entirely preoccupied with actions that feed pounds and pence and forget about other things that are actually of value to us. But let's sort of get a bit of focus and go back to the built environment. I'm just going to show you a picture of a bunch of bananas. So why on earth am I showing you a picture of bananas? Now, if you can read the label there, and I appreciate it's a little bit sort of scrunched up there, these bananas are organic and they're probably likely to be fair trade. And so that from those two perspectives, that's good. Organic means that they haven't been sprayed, you know, with pesticides and herbicides and so on and so forth. Fair trade may well mean that there's been a good deal for the workers who are actually involved in the farming of bananas. So some good positive things there, but let's look at this from another perspective. Look at these bananas, they're wrapped in plastic. Plastic waste is one of the massive problems that's you know, blighting our environment at the moment. Also, bananas only grow in subtropical and tropical environments. There's a massive amount of road miles and sea miles and diesel expenditure and carbon emissions in actually getting bananas to you. So I think the message, although a picture of bananas might seem a little bit funny, we've got to be mindful is in that in any given thing there could be positive value, but at the same time there could be negative value as well. I was umming and ahhing whether to show a picture of Greta Thunberg asserting to us we all need to drive electric cars. That was something I picked up on social media a couple of weeks ago, and so Greta was there, we must all drive our cars, and then underneath there was a young boy in Africa saying, sorry Greta, you know, I'm trying to mine all this cobalt as quick as possible. So then again, that's another situation where you've got a thing, electric cars. They can be creating positive value in the sense that it's cutting carbon emissions. But think about what we have to do to actually get the resources there. So there's kind of always two sides to a situation. So let's go back. Let's go back to the built environment, and let's sort of focus in a little bit on the value in the built environment. So this, I'm sure there have been talkers talking about sustainable development, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and what it means to actually do that. So I'm not going to talk in too much detail about that there, other than to say there's a most excellent YouTube that Catherine has done that sort of animates all this. So I'd really sort of encourage you to check that out if you possibly can. But what I want to highlight about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is they actually provide a really good framework for us to actually calculate value. And with the 17 goals there are 17 ways straight away that you can sort of calculate value and assign it into different aspects that can benefit society, planet, and economy. Let me give you some examples of what that actually might look like. So again, you might have heard about the 3 pillars of sustainable development: social value, economic value, and environmental value. So in terms of the built environment, what does that actually mean to us? How can we actually use that? So I want to talk about an idea about outcomes, positive outcomes for society, positive outcomes for economy, positive outcomes for the environment. I've got a couple of examples written down there. Creating local jobs, hiring apprentices, consulting the community, undertaking training, upskilling your workforce. These all create social value. Planting of new forests, creation of new water habitats, beavers and dams, for an example. Reducing air pollution in terms of being careful about the plant and machinery that you use and reducing your air miles. These all create environmental value. And economic value, this might seem sort of the obvious one, but if you improve your productivity, you make your development resilient to a changing future. So in other words, you design buildings that can be multi-purpose and changed over time. These actually all create sort of produced or economic value. So how on earth do we make use of this? Well, to do that, you need some kind of calculator. And this is nothing new. There have been many sort of value calculators developed over the course of time. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, there's an excellent framework there behind each of the 17 sustainable goals. There are a load of example metrics that you can use to calculate different aspects of social value, environmental value. The social value portal is one that's becoming quite popular, and that underwent a real refresh this year. So that's something, if you're interested in social value, that's something definitely to check out as well. The Construction Industry Training Board have their own key performance indicators and value indicators. I actually quite like them because it's kind of nice and simple. And one more I'll highlight is something called the Value Toolkit, which is a project that I'm actually working on in my day job. That's more than just a social value calculator. It's a whole ecosystem for embedding value and positive outcomes into your projects. So social value, environmental value calculators, nothing new there. And there are some criticisms of this approach. For one thing, because there are so many different approaches, there can often be a lack of consistency between different approaches. How on earth do you sort of value jobs over, say, forest, and and how many jobs is equal to a certain amount of certain acreage of forest, for example? Sometimes these tools can be sort of quite unwieldy and difficult to use and require a lot of additional effort, so that can kind of put people off. And that sometimes a lot of this is beyond what we need to comply. Catherine alluded to sort of some of the aspects of the construction industry, and sometimes innovation is just seen as a means to sort of, what can I do to sort of get around things, and that can be a sort of blocker to thinking about value in the wider sense. Also, monetizing social value, putting a pounds and pence value on jobs, apprenticeships, acres of forest, water habitat, can sometimes be seen as contentious, because again, what is of more value to something else? So again, these problems with value, but not to worry. there's been quite a lot of good work done in policy. This might be the sort of more boring slide there, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about this at the moment. And just to illustrate the point that there's been a lot of work going on in central government and policy, and also in industry, to up our game in value, to think about value in terms that's more than money. Social Value Act came out in 2012, for example. In 2018, our industry's Construction Leadership Council published a paper called Procuring for Value. And that paper was quite seminal in that it really was promoting a focus on outcomes, positive outcomes for society, economy and planning. So when we're thinking about buildings, infrastructure, houses, it's not just about the building, we ask the question, what can this do for us? What can this do for the planet? And what can this do for economy? These are the questions that are kind of asked. Late last year, there were two really important papers published. One was a public procurement notice 0620, and then right at the end of 2020 was the construction playbook. These are really important papers from a policy context. And the PPN 0620 paper was really important because it said social value must now be explicitly evaluated in all central government contracts. So when central government are going to build new hospitals, new schools, new infrastructure, social value must now be evaluated in those, and it's absolutely no-brainer. So this is a real significant change, because prior to that it just had to be considered and you might take it or leave it. So now it must be explicitly evaluated. Don't underestimate the shift that's gone on in the policy environment, you know, literally within the last half a year or so. And furthermore, that value must be considered right through all phases of your construction project, right from when you're doing your planning, your strategies, your business cases, right through the design of the project, and in the delivery of it, the construction of it, and in the operation of it as well. So I want to talk a little bit about outcomes, as this is something that's very much in vogue at the moment, to talk about positive outcomes. There was a book called The Little Prince by an author, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Sorry if I've messed up the pronunciation of that, but there was a really nice quote in there that talks about outcomes, and I'll read it out of there. So if you want to build a flotilla of ships, you don't sit around talking about carpentry. No, you need to set people's souls ablaze with visions of exploring distant shores. It's quite an interesting quote, and it relates to a time a couple of years ago when I was working in consulting, and one of our big directors from America came over, and it was really nice because he didn't need to do this. He didn't need to come thousands of miles over, but he came over and he talked to every one of us individually, and something very similar. He said, you know, why do we go to work? Why do we work in this industry, or actually any industry? And if the answer is we go to work just to give shareholders more profit, that is really not an inspiring thing. No, we go to work to build bridges. We go to work to build social infrastructure. We go to work to build a better society, to build more facilities. That's what I'm talking about when we sort of have a shift more away from money and outputs, but towards outcomes. It's actually the things that we're going to do to benefit us. And this sort of ties back to kind of what you actually value. In the water industry, in process industries, it's sometimes easier to think about outcomes. If you say you wanted to build a new water plant, I want this water plant to deliver drinking water for so-and-so people. That's an outcome. We want it to actually do something that's of benefit to us. So let's think about outcomes and the built environment. And three typical developments that you might see in a new school, a new hospital, a new garden city. So what might our outcomes be for these developments, and how might these be informed by what we actually value? For school, for example, what our outcomes might be: we want a healthy space. We want a space with good air quality where students can concentrate. We want a school to have multi-purpose rooms. As I mentioned earlier, we want a school to be resilient to the future, where it can perhaps change its purpose. Let's think about outcomes for a hospital. We want our hospital to basically provide good care for our town of 20,000 people. We want our hospital to be a good place for people to work in. Let's think about a garden city. We want our garden city to be safe. We want proximity to green spaces. The 15-minute community, again, I think some speakers in previous days might have talked about that idea. The 15-minute community where everything you need can be within a 15-minute walk. So these are outcomes. These are things that are going to benefit us, going to benefit society in the wider sense, and they're going to benefit the actual planet. So that's enough about the theory. So how is this actually occurring in practice? I'm just going to highlight a couple of case studies just to illustrate that this is not all kind of blue sky thinking, that this is actually happening now. First sort of case study I want to talk about is a great developer in South Wales called Western Solar. And I was first alerted to them actually on BBC Countryfile a couple of years ago, where they had an article on some of the housing developments that they were doing. And on the basis of that, I was really excited, and I got straight on the phone and phoned up their chief exec, and I wanted to find out more. And he kindly agreed to provide me with a few examples of the things that they were doing. So Western Solar, South Wales, you often think Wales, grey, slate, a lot of stone houses and so on. That's not actually the case now. What you've got happening in Wales, you've an abundance of larch wood, abundance of timber. So what Western Solar are doing, they're doing timber build. Furthermore, they're getting the vast majority of their materials locally. They're creating local jobs. They're creating local apprenticeships. And if you were to do an apprenticeship with Western Solar, you're going to get sort of multi-skilled teaching. You're going to get exposure to a lot of different trades, also a lot of different techniques in terms of energy efficiency, fitting PV and those kind of things as well. And I think they're also doing quite a good job to sort of change the perception about timber build, which in England and Wales traditionally has never been sort of that popular there. So for Western Solar, I think excellent environmental value in terms of that they're using timber, which is a renewable resource, and excellent social value in terms of the local jobs and apprentices they're actually creating, and in terms of the technology and energy efficiency there. The last case study I want to talk about was a retrofit project that was in Yorkshire that was about a year or two ago, and this won the Constructing Excellence Sustainability Project of the Year for Retrofit. So in this project, we had 130 homes, and their energy efficiency was absolutely abysmal. They were leaking energy like nobody's business, and the residents were paying absolutely through the teeth for any energy bills. When they were thinking about this project, they thought, well, let's just demolish it and make better housing. No, they didn't do that. They went in and did a deep retrofit. They insulated all of the houses. They upgraded all of the heating. And now the outcome of that is, as you see in the figures there, you know, at least 30% saving on the utility bills. You know, you saved 80% by not having in construction, by not having to demolish them. And here's the big one for me on the social value: the community was kept intact. People didn't have to move. These retrofit works could be done while people were still living there. You didn't have to displace 130 households. So an excellent social value there, an excellent environmental value there, in terms of now you've got 130 homes with much, much better energy performance. So I'm going to start to wrap up now, and I just want to leave you with an idea that's becoming quite popular, called value-based decision. So let me just explain what. So value-based decision making is about making decisions on value that is more than money. So it starts about thinking about what we actually value in life, whether at an individual level, at a team level, at a population level, at an organizational level, or even at a regional or national level. It then maybe thinks about how we're going to organize and calculate our value. social value, environmental value, economic value, 3 pillars of sustainable development. Third aspect of value-based decision making is about your outcomes. So what do you want this building, this facility to do for me, for my society, for my environment and my planet? What are my outcomes? And remember, your outcomes can be while the project is going on, and also while it's operated for the many years that it's going to actually live. So might think this might be a sort of small change in thinking, but don't underestimate the power that it has in actually truly making some transformations, as we've already seen in a couple of case studies that I presented and numerous projects that are going on now, and also due to positive intent from policy that's gonna happen in future projects. I would encourage you all to sort of keep an eye on this aspect and come back and challenge us if it's not happening. So that's me for today. Thanks very much for listening. And I hope I've given you something to think about in terms of what we value, value-based decision making, and it makes sort of positive outcomes for you and your planet and the economy. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Robert. It's just been brilliant to have you here. For the audience, if you've got questions, please do put them into the Q&A and I can make sure to ask them of Robert. My question, I guess, I know you've got some great case studies there of where this is actually happening, but we've talked across the whole week really about construction industry is perhaps a little bit slow sometimes to embrace change, and there with such a huge organization, such a huge industry, sorry, and so many organizations within it. For the young people listening, how do you think they grab this belief, this process, this attitude, and take that with them, take that forward? How would they sort of push for this?
I think start with the belief and start with the positive belief, and I think that can sort of move mountains. It's the old cliche, you know, faith the size of a grain of rice can shift a mountain. Don't actually underestimate that. And I would encourage young people not to forget that, and not to get, as they get older and move into various careers, not to get bogged down by, oh, this is the way it's always been, this is the way it's always going to go. I interact quite a bit with young professionals, communities, as through my role as an educator in the built environment, and there's that tension when kids come out of university or out of their sort of courses, out of their trade courses. They're often very enthusiastic about the planet and some of the things that they've learned, and then they get bogged down by being taught the things that that the older people have always done. So I think for young people, challenge it, you know, challenge us, you know, challenge those preconceptions, and keep challenging it, and I think that can be that can be a very powerful thing for change. Just as a second thing, every year I judge the Constructing Excellence case studies. This year I did the people development, and that's where I got at least one of the case studies from in there. And it's just kind of just being in that space when you see that there are so many great things happening. You kind of remain positive, and it might be through small disruptive companies, but it's also filtering into the larger companies, contractors and clients as well.
It's good to know that it's starting to take place, and I know that the BRE and the work that you do there is really pushing for a lot of this and helping people to come up with better ways to measure and assess sustainability. You touched on in your last screen there some of your journey to get to this point. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, about how you came to be involved in this and why it's so important to you?
I've had a sort of quite an interesting career in that I've done a lot of things. I would say in terms of construction, I first started in construction when I was a sixth form. In my summer holidays, I used to work for a local contractor, so I got real early exposure to a lot of different trades and also the culture as well, in terms of being at the brunt of practical jokes and so on. But it was a real good experience for those summer holidays when I was a sixth former, actually just being on site, doing work, learning some skills. As I said, I've had quite a sort of meandering path. I went to university and studied physics. I taught for a number of years. I then was working for a small firm designing street furniture and did that for a number of years. Then at the crash in 2008, I rebranded myself a little bit and went on to work on major projects in a number of roles, in contracts roles and authoring roles. And then a couple of years ago, with the advent of this construction sector deal and the industrial strategy, this job came up at BRE as an opportunity to really do some good things to sort of help the transformation of construction. So I sort of grabbed it with both arms.
And transformation, it really is. It seems to be, I know we've said that a couple of times today, and other speakers have mentioned that the industry has been slow to change, and now it's suddenly changing quite rapidly. So it seems like a great opportunity for young people who have that belief and that passion to come in and really make the world different.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, and I think young people are a great barometer for young people to hold the principles and to make sure that the older generation measure up against it.
Very true. Because of the age of some of our students, they're still in compulsory education, still at school. What advice would you give to your younger self starting out in your career journey from your days towards the end of school? You know, the lessons you've learned along the way.
I think don't just because I was always a bright student, and well, unfortunately for me, the only careers advice I was given, well, you're bright, so you're going to go off to university. I would say don't necessarily think that that's the only path, and I would encourage the young people, and I would also encourage the teachers to make the young people aware of all the vast options there are available in the industry, from trade skills to possible trade apprenticeships, even apprenticeship degrees, and that you don't necessarily need to go through university. Join a local firm, join a consultant. I mean, I did a word splash in another presentation that was sort of related to this that I'm going to be doing for industry over the coming months. I did a word splash of some of the roles, and I tell you, I just ran out of space on the paper of the different roles that you can do in the industry, from trade to design to project management to risk, and there's a whole load of commercial disciplines as well. It's absolutely vast, the number. So, you know, construction is not just about the trade skills. There are a vast number of things that you can do, and I think that can open it up to a much more diverse audience, which can only be a good thing.